I'm Allison from Learning at the Primary Pond. I'm a literacy specialist, and in this video, I'm going to share how, as a teacher, you can work less and take back more of your valuable time. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, I would love for you to do that, and then also hit the little bell so that you're notified every time I post a brand new video about teaching. Okay, so I love being in education. Wouldn't change it for the world. But teaching, even though it's so rewarding, there can be some drawbacks, right? There's just so much that we're responsible for. We have to, prep materials, whether it's making copies or actually making materials or finding them ourselves. We have to, even if there's like a prepackaged program we're using, we have to read through the lesson plans and really make sure that we understand what we're supposed to be doing with the kids. Then there's the big range of needs, right? Like you have to figure out how to differentiate. I always say that teachers have two jobs. It's like the job during the day where you're teaching with the kids, and then there's like everything else you have to do to prepare for being with the kids. And I would say, like, in the majority of places where I've worked, majority, not all, but the majority, I did not have enough planning time built into the contract day to fulfill my responsibilities for the day-to-day of doing a good job with my kids, right? Or even just doing the minimum. Like there's just so much to do. And I don't think it's right that teachers are just expected to like, hey, yeah, if you don't get it done, like you gotta like take stuff home and, prep on the weekends and do all this extra stuff, right? Because again, you're already working full time with the kids, which is very tiring and you're doing a lot. So, I'm not opposed to teachers like taking stuff home or doing what you need to do during certain seasons, right? Maybe back to school is a little bit busier. But what can really end up affecting you, which then in turn affects your students, is if the burden is so great all the time throughout the school year, where you're just working nights and weekends and you have no time for yourself, that's not good for you as a person, right? And if you're not able to live your life fully as you want to because school is taking over, then that not only, you deserve to live the life that you want, but not only that, like you're bringing that into the classroom, right? Even though you love your kids and you're trying to do your best by them, which is why you're working so much, if you don't have energy, if you haven't been getting enough sleep, if you don't feel mentally refreshed, then you're not bringing your best self to them. So in a nutshell, it is a win-win all around on teachers, on children, when you do get more personal time to yourself. Now, all of that said, like this is easier said than done, right? Because even if you have the best intentions, it's so easy to get sucked back in. Oh, I'll just stay a little bit extra because I got to finish this. And then the next night you're staying extra because you got to finish this, or, your principal expects this to be done by this date. You got assessments. Like it is easy to say like, hey, I want to spend more of my personal time on my personal life. It is so much easier to say that than to actually follow through and do it, because the demands of teaching are real. So I'm curious, how many like hours outside of your normal school hours / your contract day, how many extra hours are you spending on school related tasks? Let me know in the comments. And if you don't know, it would be interesting to track, because sometimes you're like, oh yeah, it's just a couple of hours, and then you actually log the time and it's so much more, which we've already talked about why we want to try to minimize that outside work time as much as possible. Now, on the other hand, if you love spending all of your time or lots of your time on school stuff, like go for it. My only caution would be is like, make sure that you're getting refreshed to come back the next day, right? Or after the weekend, make sure that you're still taking time for yourself, because even if you love all of that teacher stuff, like that's great, but you also still need to have your personal life too. All right, so next we talked about the problem, right? Let's talk about how to actually solve this. Most of the time you don't get what you need from your school or district to solve this problem of working too much on your own. And that's actually one big reason why I created my literacy clubs. I started them back in 2019, and I have a kindergarten literacy club, a first and second grade literacy club. Links are in the caption if you want to check those out. But I started them because I wanted to support teachers in an ongoing way that would contribute to better work-life balance. Now, as a member of the literacy clubs, You get tons of monthly new materials on the first of each month that makes it easier to differentiate. You get small group stuff, you get centers. It's not a curriculum, right? Like you still follow whatever program your school has given you, but we all know that, no matter how robust a program is, we're always looking for little extra activities to differentiate, right? Which the Literacy Club is all about. And so I wanted to take that burden off of teachers and give them materials that they can just print and use and go, right? Because again, it's like two jobs to have to teach the kids, but also to have to like make the materials or find the materials on your own. So the Literacy Clubs just take that burden off of you because you get so much that's new every month. But of course, in addition to having the right materials, you also kind of need to have a plan for working less. Otherwise, you'll just slide back into what you were doing before. And, you can do this at any time of school year, but this is especially helpful if you're starting at the beginning of a school year because you can go into the school year feeling strong and knowing like, okay, this is my plan. But at the same time, at any point throughout the school year, if things aren't going how you want them to go, then I have, this is from my Lit Clubs, a roadmap to reduce your unpaid working hours in 3 weeks. So this is part of my Work Less challenge that I've done with my Literacy Club members. And we just take it 1 week at a time and talk about how to make sustainable changes so that you end up working less. So in week 1, what we focus on is small group strategies. And in this little challenge workbook, which all our Literacy Club members get, number 1, you get tips for here's where you find resources inside the club, because we do give you a lot of resources. Like, here's where you find everything. And there are different strategies to save you time as you're planning small groups. For example, limit the total number of small groups you have. Good for you, good for the kids as well. And then there's some other tips too in there, but then like on workbook page 2, we're focusing on strategies for centers or independent work, because that time of day can be really like a time suck to plan for. And in the Literacy Clubs, we do give you the materials to implement in your centers, but there's also some other strategies here, like make sure you have certain centers that can be done over and over again, like a listening center, for example, or like maybe kids are rereading their decodable texts that they got in small group, which also come from the Literacy Clubs. Maybe they're rereading that as an independent center every single week. The text changes, but the task doesn't change. So that's just one example of the strategies that are in week 2 to help you spend less time prepping for your centers and independent work. And then week 3 has some other tips that are not necessarily related to centers or small group. And these are things like save time by batching your lesson plans. Like if you're doing science plans or, phonics or whatever, like sit down and type up plans for 2, 3, even 4 weeks at a time, because you've got all your materials out. Your brain is in that spot where you're thinking like, okay, I'm thinking about phonics or I'm thinking about science. Because otherwise every week you're like, okay, gotta do phonics, gotta do science, gotta do this, right? And it just takes time to get everything out and really get your mind going. So if you do at least a couple of weeks at a time, that actually ends up saving you time, which is always something that we appreciate, right? All right, so I hope that some of these strategies are helpful to you. Of course, in the Literacy Clubs, you get so much more, right? You get all the centers, you get all the small group materials, you get this little workbook to help you reduce your unpaid working hours, just all sorts of resources with the goal of giving you back your time, right? Because being a good teacher does not have to mean that you're spending your nights and you're spending your weekends planning for school. Might it happen sometimes? Yeah, but that shouldn't have to be your reality. Like that's not right. So would love for you to join the Literacy Clubs. We do open up twice a year, January and July. So you can get in for about like a week and a half every time we're open. If you happen to be watching this after or, before we open the doors and it's just not open, there is a link to a wait list. So check out that link in the caption. Would love to help you save time in the Lit Clubs and support you. We actually have a monthly call where I get on Zoom with our members. And if you have questions or need help, I'm there. And the other teachers are there supporting you too. All right, thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you in my Literacy Clubs. Before you leave, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.